Okay, let's get into this. We are tracing what I think is one of the most compelling shifts in, well, in modern economic migration. It's a story that's particularly resonant for the UK's Caribbean diaspora.
It really is. I mean, for decades, the flow was almost entirely one way, wasn't it? From the Caribbean, from Jamaica towards the economic pull of London, of the UK's big industrial cities.
Exactly. But now that tide is, it's definitely turning. We're
Yeah.
seeing this distinct group of UK homeowners, many with these incredibly deep Jamaican roots, and they're looking at the homes they've lived in for 20, maybe 30 years.
Right, looking at the value that's built up.
The sheer value. And they're asking this really fundamental question. Is this the right time to unlock what I've built to fund a whole new life?
And what's so fascinating here, and the sources are very clear on this, is that we're not talking about, speculative investment. This isn't people trying to play the markets.
Yep.
This is a decision to fundamentally reposition a life. It's profound. They're seeing their UK property not as the end goal, but as this powerfully optimized vehicle that's done its job.
It's done its primary mission.
Yes. It's raised a family, it's anchored a career, and now it's ready to finance the next chapter, which is an entirely different kind of existence.
And to really capture that difference, that shift in rhythm and reality, we're using this symbolic journey that the source material brings up, the move from Clapham to Clarendon.
Which is such a perfect metaphor.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Clapham, it just screams that high-octane London pace, the density, the constant motion, and the striving that really defines life in the capital.
And then Clarendon, a parish in Jamaica that symbolizes, well, the exact opposite. Land, space, a grounded rhythm. It's a place of potential, of putting down real roots. It's a move from just sheer velocity to deliberate intention.
So our deep dive today, it's leaning heavily on some very detailed analysis from a group called Jamaica Homes, specifically the expertise of its founder, Dean Jones.
And his background is key here. He's not just a real estate agent. He's a chartered builder, a project manager, and a licensed real estate professional.
Yeah.
That combination it's quite unique.
It means his insights bridge that gap, right?
Okay.
Between the emotional dream of moving and the hard hat reality of engineering and logistics.
Exactly. It lets us get past the what if and into the crucial how to.
Okay, but before we get into any of the numbers, any of the mechanics, we absolutely have to set the context. This is paramount.
Yes.
The source material insists on this, and so do we. This whole conversation, it just can't happen in a vacuum. We have to acknowledge the current reality in Jamaica. The island is in the middle of this massive recovery and rebuilding effort after Hurricane Melissa.
We can't overstate that. By all accounts, it was a historic and catastrophic tropical cyclone.
So when we start talking about investment and opportunity in that environment, it has to be framed with real sensitivity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sensitivity for the families, for the communities who are right now, as we speak, regrouping, repairing, and dealing with incredible loss.
But the source also makes this really insightful point, that times of rebuilding are often also times of profound planning, of making big decisions for the future.
The two things are intertwined, aren't they? Recovery and investment. They have to be.
So that really sets our mission for you, the listener, today. We're going to explore what that equity stored in your UK home really means, what it represents in human terms.
Then we'll break down the specific nitty-gritty UK financial options for actually releasing that capital.
And, most importantly, we are going to dissect the non-negotiable realities, the responsibilities of investing thoughtfully and resiliently in Jamaica right now, especially in a post-disaster environment.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's move this conversation away from, the clinical world of finance and into lived reality. We're talking about equity, but redefining it as stored time.
And this is such a powerful way to look at it. It's so necessary because, when you talk to a high street lender or a mortgage broker in the UK, the language is deliberately sterile.
Oh, it's all about LTV ratios, loan to value. It's outstanding balances, market prices, interest rate exposure. It's finance speak. And it's completely divorced from the decades of human effort that created that value in the first place.
Right. It strips the humanity right out of the investment. But this concept the sources introduce, it's so memorable. Equity is literally time stored in property. It's a physical, tangible manifestation of patience.
Yeah.
of consistency.
And if you really break down what that stored time is made of, it becomes incredibly real. It's not just, the market magically rising around you.
Not at all.
It's every single mortgage payment you made, often grinding through some really tough times, high inflation, soaring interest rates in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s.
It's every repair, every time the boiler packed in, every DIY project you tackled on a damp, cold Saturday morning instead of doing, well, anything else.
All of that. It's years, sometimes 2 or 3 decades of just staying put. Years of sacrifice while the underlying value of that property was quietly, steadily compounding. That consistency, that time you invested, that's what's visible now as capital.
And for so many people in this specific group we're talking about, the ones who bought their homes in the mid-90s or the early 2000s, this isn't just about keeping up with inflation. It's generational wealth being realized.
It is. We're focusing on homeowners who bought in places like, say, Greater London, but maybe outside zones 1 to 3, or in the West Midlands, or in those key commuter belts in the Southeast.
So let's make this really concrete for someone listening. Let's paint a picture.
Okay, sure. Let's imagine a semi-detached house in an area like Croydon, or maybe somewhere in the outer M25 ring. That property might have been bought for, let's say, £120,000 back in 2001.
Which seemed like a fortune at the time.
An absolute fortune. But today, that same property's valuation could easily be £450,000, maybe more. So if the homeowner has been diligent, if they've paid down their mortgage consistently over those 20-plus years, they're likely sitting on maybe £350,000 in accumulated liquid equity.
And that number, that appreciation, it would have been completely unimaginable when they first signed those papers.
Utterly. It's stability that has matured into real capital. And Dean Jones from Jamaica Homes, he sums this up so beautifully.
Oh, there's that quote.
Yes, he says, equity is not luck. It's patience made visible. And patience, when released wisely, becomes power.
Patience made visible. I mean, that's the core insight, isn't it? That power is what allows for this profound pivot in life.
And the pivot isn't just about trading up from a semi in the Midlands to a detached house down the road. That's not the dream anymore. For this demographic, it means releasing the capital that's anchored them in the UK
Right.
and redeploying it to finance a fundamentally different life altogether. A return to a life with more space, with less financial burden, and with a real sense of cultural rootedness.
Which brings us to that crucial question of why Jamaica for this specific group. Because for those who grew up in the UK, but whose parents, whose grandparents have maintained that deep, deep connection to the island, Jamaica offers something that, well, that financial markets just can't measure.
It's an emotional repatriation, a spiritual one even.
Yeah.
And the specific things driving this movement, they're very tangible.
Like what?
The desire to reconnect with family land. You hear this story again and again, plots that have been in the family for generations but have just sat there undeveloped.
There's also this yearning for a slower rhythm, right? A self-directed pace of living, a release from that decades-long grind and hustle that's just required to survive and build wealth in the UK.
Absolutely. And the sources emphasize this idea of space, and they break it down into 3 types.
Okay.
Physical space, room to grow your own food, room for extended family to come and stay. Cultural space, being immersed in a context where your heritage is the norm, not the exception.
And the third?
Emotional space, the reduction of that day-to-day background stress, the ability to finally dictate your own pace. It's the chance to build something that feels rooted and enduring rather than rushed and temporary.
So the UK home achieved financial stability. And now that stored stability is being leveraged, it's being transplanted to create a new cultural and familial anchor in Jamaica. Yeah. So we've firmly established the why, that powerful emotional driver. Now we have to get into the crucial how, the detailed mechanics of actually moving that stored time, that equity, from the English market and into the Jamaican economy.
And this is where the planning has to replace the impulse. It's absolutely critical for any UK homeowner thinking about this. There are really 3 distinct financial pathways to release that equity.
And we should say right up front, each one of these comes with its own set of obligations, right?
A huge set. Significant non-transferable obligations. We're talking about UK tax, specifically capital gains tax. We're talking currency conversion risks and long-term planning issues like, maintaining your residency status or making sure inheritance can flow smoothly across 2 different countries. You really have to decide which set of challenges you're willing to take on.
Okay, so let's start with what seems like the cleanest path, the most straightforward one, selling outright.
Right. This is the most direct method. Structurally, it's the simplest way to transfer the capital. You sell your primary UK residence, that house we talked about that's maximized its stored time.
You realize the full cash value.
Exactly. You pay off whatever is left on the mortgage, and then you're left with this large cash sum. You use that to purchase or fund the construction in Jamaica, and often you can achieve a completely cash purchase or build with very minimal local borrowing.
So talk us through the main upsides here, but also
Good.
what are the big logistical hurdles you have to get over, especially on the UK side of things?
Well, the upside is clear. It's clean capital. It's a complete break from UK property obligations, from maintenance headaches, from council tax bills. You have maximum liquidity. Simple.
But
But the major hurdle, the one that can trip people up badly, is UK capital gains tax, or CGT.
right, explain that.
If the home you're selling has been your principal private residence, your PPR, for the entire time you've owned it, then you're generally exempt from CGT.
Yeah.
But, and this is a big but, if you ever rented it out for a period, or if you'd already started moving and established a different main home, you could face a significant CGT liability on a portion of that profit.
So getting that calculation wrong could be
It
devastating.
could immediately wipe out tens of thousands of pounds from your Jamaican budget before you've even started. So getting clarity on your residency and your PPR status is the absolute first step. It is non-negotiable.
And then there's the currency issue.
Yes. You're moving a very large sum of sterling and you're converting it into Jamaican dollars. That transfer has to be timed carefully because even a small shift in the exchange rate can dramatically impact your purchasing power. You need to be looking at specialist, low-fee currency brokers for this, not just your high street bank.
Okay, so let's move to the middle ground option, the one that seems to be really popular, selling and downsizing. This one lets you keep that UK anchor.
This is very often the preferred choice, especially for families who want to keep the door open for return trips, or maybe their children and grandchildren are still in the UK.
So how does it work?
They sell the large family home, the one that's done all the heavy lifting. Then they use just a fraction of that released capital to buy a smaller, lower maintenance property in the UK. A small flat, a retirement bungalow, something like that.
And that lets them keep their UK residency.
Exactly. They retain their residency, their ties, and the remaining significant chunk of capital is then freed up for the Jamaican investment.
This sounds like a good way to mitigate some of the risk. But does it bring in new complexities with CGT?
It can. I mean, if the smaller property becomes your new PPR, the initial sale should still be CGT exempt, assuming the original home qualified. The complexity is more in managing the expectations of what that freed capital can do.
What do you mean?
Well, you might free up, say, £200,000, which sounds like a lot, but you now have to maintain two properties in two different countries. You have the smaller UK base and the new Jamaican asset. You've got a budget not just for the purchase, but for the ongoing UK taxes, the utility bills, the maintenance costs on that smaller property. It buys you peace of mind, but it also means you're retaining UK financial liabilities.
Okay, that makes sense. Now for the most complex option, the one you call the dual asset strategy, equity release or remortgaging. This is for people who want to keep the UK property and use it as an income-generating asset.
This strategy requires extreme diligence. You absolutely need professional advice here. But the potential reward is great. You maintain two substantial assets.
So you keep the UK property and what, you rent it out.
Yes, you convert it to a rental asset, so you become a landlord. Then you either remortgage the property or potentially use a highly regulated equity release product to pull out a significant lump sum, say 50% of the property's value, and that's the money you deploy in Jamaica.
Okay, hold on. Before we move on, let's really drill down on the biggest risk here.
Yeah.
If you use an equity release strategy, aren't you at risk of this interest-only debt just compounding and growing on your UK asset, especially if the rental income isn't guaranteed?
That is the single most critical pitfall, and it's why this path demands such careful stress testing. Standard equity release products are often interest-only, or they roll up the interest into the debt itself so it compounds over time.
Which could get out of control fast.
It could. If the rental income from your UK property, which by the way is often taxed heavily for non-residents, if that income stream falters because you have tenant issues, or if your Jamaican build runs significantly over budget, that compounding debt back in the UK can rapidly eat away all your remaining equity. You're exposed to two different economies and two separate legal systems.
So the homeowner needs a rock-solid contingency plan, one that doesn't rely solely on that UK rental income to service the debt. Is that right?
Precisely. You need to be sure you have enough independent capital or sufficient retirement funds to cover that interest payment for several years, no matter what happens with the rental market. The benefit, though, if you can manage that risk, is retaining a substantial, highly appreciating UK asset that continues to work for your family's long-term wealth while also funding the dream build in Jamaica. It just demands professional legal and tax guidance across both countries.
So now that we've laid out the pathways, let's get to the key insight.
Yeah.
The sheer leverage of UK equity in the Jamaican market. How far does that highly valued UK pound really stretch when it hits the ground in Jamaica?
The difference in scale is it's transformative. Even when you factor in the currency conversion and all the associated fees, a sum of, say, £150,000, which might only cover a small deposit and the transaction costs in the southeast of England, can achieve something fundamentally complete in many Jamaican parishes.
What can it actually buy? What specifically?
But the sources outline three key areas where that UK leverage is felt the strongest. First, it can often purchase land outright. We're talking a titled plot of family land or agricultural land, which gives you immediate rooted security from day one.
Okay.
Second, and this is absolutely crucial, it can fund a hurricane-resilient build. This is a non-negotiable cost in the current climate, and having that UK capital ensures you can afford high-quality, robust construction from the very beginning. You're not cutting corners.
What's the third area?
Third, it covers all the necessary professional fees, government approvals, surveys, legal work, and most importantly, it allows for substantial contingency buffers. And that buffer is essential. Construction and land acquisition are rarely perfectly smooth anywhere in the world, and you need that margin to guard against unexpected delays, cost hikes, or logistical hurdles.
That contingency buffer is key, isn't it? Because that's what protects you from having to scramble for high-interest local financing halfway through the build.
And that's exactly why the sources emphasize that UK equity doesn't just buy property, it buys breathing room. It allows a returnee to run their project without that immediate crushing pressure from high-interest local borrowing. That flexibility, that time freed from financial urgency, that's the true power we're talking about.
Dean Jones, again, he distills this into a brilliant definition of wealth. He says, wealth is not what you buy, it's what you no longer have to rush.
It's fantastic.
It completely reframes the objective. It moves it away from, luxury acquisition and towards self-determination, towards time management.
Exactly. And it lines perfectly with that symbolic goal of moving from the rush of Clapham to the deliberate, grounded pace you need to build responsibly in Clarendon.
And that transition, it takes us directly into our third section. We've talked about the financial mechanics in the UK, but that money has to meet the reality on the ground. This section is all about the Jamaican reality opportunity with responsibility.
This is the necessary reality check, and the source material is absolutely unequivocal on this point. Jamaica is not England with sunshine. Anyone moving capital has to recognize they're entering a fundamentally different legal, infrastructural, and environmental context.
Which means that patience and exhaustive research are far more valuable than a big bank balance.
Far more. What are the major differences, then, that require this careful planning and just cannot be overlooked?
Well, it starts with property law. Unlike the UK, where most land is registered and ownership is generally clear, Jamaica still has a much more complex land titling process. You have to invest time and money in rigorous land surveys, making sure the title is clean, unencumbered, and fully registered.
And then there are the financing structures. Local borrowing might be harder to get, or it could carry significantly higher interest rates than you're used to in the UK. And finally, the insurance realities are starkly different. Your standard UK home insurance policy doesn't cover Category 5 hurricane damage. Specialist disaster insurance in Jamaica is expensive, and it requires strict adherence to the latest building codes.
And that brings us right back to that immediate, urgent context, the post-Hurricane Melissa environment. We need to keep reiterating the sensitivity required here as recovery is ongoing, but we also have to address what this means practically for a new investor.
Melissa caused historic, catastrophic damage. For an investor, this means two things. One, there's an increased urgency on the island for resilient building. Two, there are significant challenges with supply chains and cost inflation for materials and labor.
So while the event was a tragedy, it has put this intense, immediate focus on improving certain aspects of construction and governance.
It really has. What specific areas of focus should a UK investor be keenly aware of right now?
Firstly, construction standards. The demand for high-quality, code-compliant builders has just skyrocketed. That can lead to longer timelines and higher labor costs. You have to budget for that. Secondly, drainage and elevation planning is now critical important. You can't just build on low-lying land anymore without significant and expensive engineering to handle storm surges and rain runoff.
But while those are the immediate logistical challenges, the sources do note some extremely positive structural changes that are emerging from these recovery efforts.
That's right. We're seeing proactive steps from the government, which is really encouraging for anyone thinking long-term. The NHT, the National Housing Trust, which is Jamaica's key organization for affordable housing, they launched a hurricane relief grant to support those affected.
Which shows real institutional support, a recognition of the housing crisis that the storm caused.
And now let's get into what is probably the most significant long-term structural improvement. The government is finally implementing a long-awaited national building code.
This is massive. It's a huge win for safety and resilience advocates. This new code elevates the standards of construction to withstand modern climate realities. So for a UK investor, this means your property, if it's built under these new rules, will be significantly more robust and, crucially, more insurable.
What does that mean in practice? What does the new code actually mandate?
Well, it mandates things like stronger reinforced concrete frames. It has specific requirements for roof bracing and tie-downs to resist high winds. We're talking up to 160 miles per hour, which is common in Category 5 storms. And it has much stricter foundation requirements based on soil type and seismic risk.
And that level of detail is exactly what someone listening needs to hear. An investment made now, while it might face some logistical delays, is ultimately going to result in a superior, more resilient asset because of these new standards.
Correct. And that UK equity, because it buys you that breathing room we talked about, allows the returnee to absorb the higher costs that come with building to this new higher standard, rather than being forced to cut corners, which is often a fatal flaw in non-resilient construction.
So let's talk about the Jamaican property market itself, which the sources describe as being non-monolithic. We need to get rid of this idea that there's a standard price per square foot across the whole island.
That is vital intelligence. Jamaica is a complete patchwork of different markets. The price for a plot of land in a high-end area of Kingston or Montego Bay can easily rival prices in London, especially for a developed plot with infrastructure already in place.
But then,
Conversely, you go to the deep rural parishes like Clarendon or St. Elizabeth, and you can find land for a fraction of that cost. The price variables are just profound. It depends on the parish, proximity to infrastructure, reliable roads, water, electricity zoning regulations, and now, post-Melissa, the elevation and inherent risk profile of the land is a huge factor.
so relying on UK investment practices like looking at simple property comparables is just, it's a recipe for disaster.
Completely. So what are the mandatory planning steps for someone who has released their UK capital and is ready to invest responsibly?
The sources lay out a four-step necessity. 1. Engage local, licensed professionals from the very beginning. And that doesn't just mean a realtor. It means a chartered builder, a surveyor, and a solicitor who specializes in Jamaican land law. Trying to manage this remotely or through well-meaning but unqualified family members is a major source of loss.
Number 2 is thoroughly understanding the land titles and surveys. This is where you verify boundaries, access rights, any legal encumbrances. You cannot skip this step.
What are steps 3 and 4?
Step 3 is building with climate reality in mind. That means sticking to the new National Building Code, budgeting for proper drainage and resilient materials, not just choosing what looks nice. And step 4, and this is the hardest one for people coming from the fast-paced UK environment, allow your timelines to breathe.
That patience we keep coming back to.
It's the essential piece of local wisdom. In Jamaica, rushing costs more than waiting. Rushing construction leads to hurried planning, poor vetting of contractors, taking shortcuts with materials, which the new code tries to prevent, and ultimately much higher long-term costs because of inevitable rework or damage. The capital has to be deployed slowly, deliberately.
And this deliberate deployment, it ties directly into the ethical dimension of this move, which the sources frame as focusing on contribution, not extraction.
And this is a profound distinction, especially in a recovery environment. Most UK homeowners doing this are not simply moving in to extract favorable value or take advantage of lower labor costs. They are returning to contribute to the local economy, to invest in their communities of origin, and to belong as active participants.
That focus on contribution just radically changes the dynamic, doesn't it? It ensures the investment is seen not as foreign extraction, but as a homecoming, as internal reinvestment.
And Dean Jones reinforces this. He has another great quote on belonging. Coming home is not about what you take with you. It's about what you're prepared to build, again, patiently, alongside others.
Hmm.
That just underscores a long-term commitment to the island's future. It means employing local, licensed contractors and ensuring the new asset you're building contributes to the overall community's resilience and infrastructure.
So if the investor follows the new code and hires locally, they are fundamentally helping to lift the standards of the entire community, which is an incredibly powerful form of contribution.
Absolutely. The UK equity, when you look at it through this lens, it's a catalyst for localized, resilient development.
Yeah.
It's helping to move away from temporary structures and towards permanent, storm-proof homes.
Okay, we've covered the complexity of the finances and the necessity of responsible investment. Let's pivot now to the ultimate goal of all of this. The symbolic shift and clarity of choice that this entire process can deliver to the homeowner.
Right. The symbolism of Clapham to Clarendon is so much more than just geographic. It's an internal transformation. Clapham represents the necessity of striving, the need to keep up with the mortgage, the cost of living, the density, and the pace that defined their entire working life in the UK.
And Clarendon represents the complete antithesis of that. Land, grounding, a chance for self-sufficiency, and a pace that's dictated by the sun and the seasons, not by the morning rush hour. It's a move from required motion to self-directed motion.
And the move is fundamentally about acknowledging that the UK chapter, the one that was defined by that English property, has done its job. It was successful. It did everything it was supposed to do.
It raised and educated the children, it provided stability through all the economic cycles, it anchored a career, its function is complete.
And that recognition allows the individual to release that asset without any guilt. We highlighted that great quote earlier. A home doesn't fail you when you leave it. Sometimes it succeeds by letting you go. It fulfilled its contract by storing the time and the value needed for the next great leap.
And crucially, realizing that stored time, that equity, it doesn't magically simplify life. You're still going to have challenges,
Oh, of course.
but it absolutely rearranges the pressure points. And that rearrangement is the core benefit of releasing that capital.
So let's talk practically about how that rearrangement actually shows up for the returnee. What does that flexibility buy you in terms of reducing life stresses?
It buys you leverage against financial urgency. If your equity eliminates the need for high-interest construction loans, you are no longer beholden to quarterly bank statements or sudden market shifts. The flexibility that gives you allows for phased development.
What does that mean exactly?
It means you can build the foundations this year, finish the shell of the house next year, and then complete the interiors the year after that. You can fund each phase entirely with cash from your UK equity as it becomes available or as you need it.
And that phased approach is essential for quality control. For adhering to that new stringent national building code, it allows for the waiting that's required by that local wisdom. In Jamaica, rushing costs more than waiting.
Exactly. It removes the stress of a deadline that's been imposed by a lender. And the flexibility also extends to family support. The capital can provide the means to support extended family members locally, maybe helping to fund education or smaller infrastructure projects, without requiring the investor to overstretch what is now, likely, a fixed retirement income.
So at the end of the day, this all boils down to one incredibly powerful concept: choice.
Yes, choice over your pace, choice over the scale of your new home, choice over your involvement in your new community, and choice over how you manage your time. You move from a life that was dictated by financial necessity to one that is governed by deliberate intent.
And that connects right back to the ultimate truth about that UK property. Somewhere between the solicitor's office in Clapham and that first quiet morning surveying the land in Clarendon, many homeowners have this realization. The house they spent 2 or 3 decades working tirelessly to pay off. It was never the final destination.
It was the vehicle.
Exactly. Its greatest value is realized not in its peak market price, but in its function. When it finally takes the homeowner where they were meant to go all along, to a life of stability, security, and rootedness in Jamaica. This whole process is a considered, grounded decision, leveraging the past to fund a highly planned, resilient future. It's not an impulsive fantasy.
This has been a really deep and, I think, necessary dive into what is a monumental life decision. And the first step, as we've noted throughout this, is not calling an estate agent. It is achieving absolute clarity and understanding.
And that clarity, it only really happens when 3 critical factors align in the mind of the person thinking about this move.
Number 1, what your UK property is truly worth. And that includes doing the necessary, sometimes painful calculations of your capital gains tax liability based on your principal private residence history.
Number 2, what your stored equity realistically allows you to achieve in Jamaica. And that means accounting for currency fluctuations, local professional fees, and the cost difference of building to those new, highly resilient national building code standards.
And number 3, what Jamaica requires, not what it promises. And this means accepting the realities of recovery, of supply chain strain, and the absolute imperative for patience and local expertise. It's about moving steadily, not loudly.
And when that value, that allowance, and that requirement all align, the potential for movement becomes clarity. It's not a leap of faith anymore. It's a grounded, well thought out decision.
And clarity, especially in uncertain times, as Dean Jones reminded us, is its own kind of wealth. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We've talked extensively about UK equity as stored time, time paid into a physical asset.
So consider this. What other types of stored time might you possess that could fund a shift in your own pace, even if you never sell your home? Maybe it's the professional experience you've built up over decades that allows you to do remote consulting at a high rate. Or maybe it's the network capital you've accumulated that can open new business opportunities. Or maybe it's simply the sheer patience you've developed over 20 years of financial stability.
How could realizing that non-financial value, that stored experience, that stored patience fund, not just a purchase, but an actual shift in the rhythm of your life, allowing you to finally move steadily with deliberate intent into your next great chapter, wherever in the world that may be?
A deeply valuable question to close on.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the financial mechanics and the essential responsibility required to turn stored time into a rooted, resilient future.
It's always a pleasure. We hope this provides the detailed clarity needed for that next considered step.